tests. Me and my youngest sister, we have a genetic disorder called DADA2. My mother has schizophrenia from 2017. She is under medication, but it's very hard to convince her to take the medicine. If someday she forgets and I remind her, she behaves rudely and points out that I have failed my medical exam, entrance exam, and my first and second attempts. My father fell in a well in his adolescence, and he has probably some kind of PTSD since then. It's very hard for me how he behaves from one moment to the next. Sometimes he's calm, sometimes he's very angry. My younger sister's also becoming like this. I don't know, but I also feel my mother's love is quite conditional, while I feel my father loves me genuinely. I'm not going to go into all the details in this one. Trisha talks about her mother being very critical of her and kind of fluctuating in how she shows up with her love. There's a fluctuation between criticism and care that comes through. And Trisha also talks about how she shares everything with her mom, but now she feels too ashamed to cry in front of her. She doesn't feel the same connection she had with her when she was younger. And now I am feeling that I am the worst child a parent could have because I am bad-mouthing about her. I assume you mean in this letter to me, Trisha. I've been doing maladaptive daydreaming since 2020. I think about being in med school, being a good doctor, having a boyfriend who would not shout at me, being famous among friends. In my daydreams, everyone would think I am wise and beautiful. In real life, I have no friends and I have no boyfriend ever. My classmates used to ask for my notes, but now they don't because I'm no longer a good student. Whenever I feel I would make it to med school, I feel that I'm not doing hard work for it. I want to do hard work so much, but the maladaptive daydreaming interferes. I'm in my room so much I can't sit in a place. It's not like I am not pretty, but if my mother pinpoints some of my insecurity, I feel vulnerable. I have opened for a few times in front of some of my classmates, maybe friends, I don't know, but conversations sound too much boring even to my ears. I feel they might think I have so much annoyance. That's not the case. I love nature, but I have to stick in my room because of my preparations. I am quite confused what rubbish I have said in this letter, but I've went with the natural flow. Be happy and healthy. Best wishes for you. Thank you. Dear Trisha, I hope you'll forgive me for summarizing some of your letter in this video. I didn't think it was rubbish, but I thought we could get to it a little quicker. I think at the heart of what you're saying is you have complicated relationships with your family members. And a large part of that is that both of your caregivers have endured extreme pain and trauma, and that trauma is now affecting you and your sister. And I'm so sorry for all of that. Mental illness is something that is present in my family, as is schizophrenia, so I deeply understand that aspect of your letter, and I'm so sorry that it's something your family is dealing with as well. It's a terrible disease, and PTSD also comes with its challenges, so your family is dealing with a lot, and by extension you are as well. And so I'm very sorry for that. One of my family members who does have schizophrenia has a medication that they give as a shot once a month. I don't know if that's accessible where you are, but that may be something you could bring up to your father and see if there is a monthly shot your mother can take instead of daily pills. One of the hardest things with people with schizophrenia or severe mental illness of any kind is being able to continue to take those pills in a regimented way. And the shot does seem to help with that and leave less room for kind of gaps in care. So that's one thing you could bring up to your father. I think it makes a lot of sense as to why you're maladaptive daydreaming, especially in such a volatile environment. I mentioned it in the first maladaptive daydreaming video. A maladaptive habit stems from the body and the mind and brain trying to protect us and trying to keep us safe or trying to give us relief from certain conditions of our environment. So to me, it makes so much sense that you would be in a volatile environment with two caregivers who can't quite contain themselves or stabilize themselves. And what does the body do and what does the mind do in order to provide relief to you and help your days become more manageable? It gives you nice daydreams. It's lovely and it's a kind of gift, but of course, now it's become maladaptive where it's just intrusive as well and is causing pain on top of the other pain you're already dealing with. I hope you can give yourself some compassion in that it's not your fault you developed this coping mechanism that has helped you up until this point, and I hope you can give yourself self-compassion as you work through all the things you're kind of dealing with. When it comes to maladaptive daydreaming, I highly recommend that anyone who has gone through trauma or whose maladaptive daydreaming has an underlying level of trauma, that's kind of the thing to target first. I definitely recommend all the suggestions I offer in the first 2 maladaptive quitting videos. I think they can all be really beneficial, and I highly recommend trying all those. But mostly in this letter to you, I'm just going to talk mostly about trauma. I recently started seeing an OCD therapist. Even in the OCD treatment, we're doing exposure response therapy, and she says to me, if you have trauma underneath some of these obsessive compulsive behaviors, then that's where we should pause and you should go see a trauma-informed therapist, and then we can return and work on the OCD again. So even in something like that, it's, treat the trauma and then get to the other thing. So as much as you can do for that base level of trauma, I think that's the thing you should target even more so than the maladaptive daydreaming. I highly recommend, if you're able to see a trauma-informed therapist. I don't know what the accessibility is like where you are. I want to be clear that I'm not a mental health professional, just a stranger on the internet. I strive to share resources on creativity and wellness, but I myself am not mentally health professionally trained or medically trained in any way. I think if I were you, in the context of what I know about trauma and with a very small sense of what I know about your daily life, if I were you, I would find your joys. Find every bit of light in every day in every healthy way that you can, because by focusing on the joyful moments, I think you'll be able to convince your brain a little more to stay on board, and it will just make your life more pleasant, which would be great. So whatever small joys you can find, really focus on them and do what you can to expand on those small joys. Unfortunately, when you have an unstable parent, or in your case 2 unstable parents, they're not going to be able to provide you with the love and consistent care and safety that you really deserve and that I wish you were receiving. The hard truth is that you could be a perfect kid and it wouldn't make a difference because of your caregivers. Mentally unwell or unstable people can't thoroughly take care of children if they're not stable and well themselves. It's just kind of a fact. It's like, it's sick people taking care of some of the most vulnerable people of our population. And, I feel so much for your parents as well in this. I don't agree with how they're treating you or your sister, but I can understand coming from those places of trauma. That said, that doesn't negate your self-worth, and that doesn't negate you being loved in the way you deserve. Unfortunately, I don't think that is necessarily going to come from your parents. One of the things that I hope you can take from this video is that the conditions of your life are not your fault. Your mom and dad may take their pains out on you and your sister, but you're not the reason that they take their pains out on you. And even in your letter to me, I could feel your guilt, and you expressed, I think it was shame of even talking about the conditions in which you live. You're allowed to talk about the life you've lived, and I'm so sorry that you've lived in such a constricted environment where even speaking the truth of your existence feels dangerous. So, to emphasize, you're good and worthy of love just as you are. And just because your parents cannot convey that to you effectively doesn't mean that you're not good and lovable just as you are. I'm also sorry that your sister is taking out or picking up the unhealthy traits of your parents, and I hope that you can recognize which traits you don't want to carry forward with you. I'm sure your parents do have some lovely traits that you may want to carry forward But I'm sure in that batch of traits, there are a bunch you don't want to carry forward. And I hope you'll be vigilant about not carrying forward the ones that could be harmful to your future and your present. One of the things I want to say is really hard for me to say, but I think if you can allow yourself to really hear it and take it in, it will make your life slightly easier. It may not be easier emotionally, but you will be able to move forward and make your own future if you can come to terms with what I'm gonna say. You cannot save your parents. You can't save your family. It's a dysfunctional situation, as you rightly called it, and you can't control your parents. You can't. You just can't. You can't control your sister either. You're 18. You're not very far from childhood. You're basically still a child. You're still underneath your parents' rooftop. You're still in their realm. And I would bet that you have some emotional parentification from growing up in this environment and maybe other forms of parentification. And I'm sorry, you don't get to get your childhood back. You don't get to experience a calmer childhood that was less volatile, and that's going to suck to continue to come to terms with it as you get older. And I'm so sorry for that for you. I just want to say that. I'm not saying it in a pitying way, I'm saying it in an understanding way. I understand how that is, and I'm so sorry. So it's not your job to save your parents. It's not your job to rescue your family members. And I know that your life may have made demands on you that no kid should have had to deal with. And I hope that as you move forward into your life, whatever it looks like, that you can find softness and gentleness in yourself, and especially when things from the trauma come up. Because it's not, I imagine it's not just the maladaptive daydreaming where you're experiencing the effects of this trauma. So I hope you will just be kind and soft with yourself and allow yourself to find ways to process the trauma. One of the things I think while you're in that environment, it's kind of challenging to process trauma when you're actively in a realm of trauma. Even like doing a therapy like EMDR for PTSD, I think it would be near impossible to do that kind of trauma treatment. If you're in a traumatizing environment, you kind of need to be at a place of baseline calm to even like handle a kind of treatment like that. That said, I think there are things you can do. I always recommend yoga, trauma release exercises, trauma-informed therapy, any kind of exercise that keeps you in your body, do that. Find places where you can be safe, even if the safety only feels temporarily accessible. If you feel safe when you're running, if you feel safe when you're doing yoga for an hour, that's great. That's an hour more of safety than you necessarily felt, the day before. When your mom, sister, or your dad say something hurtful, I would give yourself a nice self-containing hug. This comes from Dr. Peter Levine, who wrote trauma-informed books, and it's one of the things that can just calm the nervous system really fast. And it's a nice one that no one has to know what you're doing. You're just giving yourself a little self-hug. And if they have something to say, whatever. It's not your business. Just let them say what they have to say, but try not to take it in. Because what they're doing is they're displacing their pain from their body, or they're trying to by sharing that pain with you. It kind of harkens to the phrase, misery loves company. When someone's unhappy, they like to disperse their unhappiness around others. And unfortunately, you're in the crossfire for a lot of different people's pain right now. One other thing you can do if they say hurtful things to you, I used to do meridian tapping in a garden in New York City, and it was led by this woman, Wenchi. And Wenchi would say, if you have a conversation with someone and they were gossiping or they say something you don't like, after they leave, you can just kind of brush yourself off. Don't have to take that with you. So she kind of treated the unkind words or gossip as kind of dust that you could just brush off. And it's kind of like a nice CBT-esque-ish sort of thing, where you just can like physically brush off to mentally brush off and emotionally brush off what you don't need. And none of us need that like harmful language or name calling or what have you. If you get called names or told things that are unkind, go into the bathroom, go into your bedroom after, and no one else is around, just brush them off. You don't need that. No one needs that. Life is too short to be verbally abused or otherwise abused. One of the final things I would recommend is to find alternative environments. I don't know if you have aunts or female mentors or other people in your neighborhood who are kind and caring and safe adults who can provide you with a safer environment. Maybe that's just afternoons studying at someone else's kitchen table. Maybe that's just receiving some nice loving words from someone who can be a stable presence in your life. If I were you, I would gravitate toward the healthy, safe people. I would recommend women who are willing to offer stable care that your parents can't necessarily provide. Another thing you mentioned loving nature. Is there a place in nature where you can study peacefully, like a courtyard at school, or a balcony, or your backyard, or I really have no sense of like what your neighborhood looks like, but you know, a place where students hang out, maybe like a square where there's some nice trees or flowers. Are there places where you can safely study and allow your body to relax to get to a place of focus? I can't imagine, or I can imagine, trying to study in a volatile environment, even without maladaptive daydreaming. Many people would struggle with that. So again, it kind of goes back to trauma in your home environment. It makes so much sense why you can't concentrate. And I wouldn't necessarily put all of that on maladaptive daydreaming, even though it's manifesting as that. I think if you increase your sense of safety, no matter where you are, you'll start to find pockets of concentration and find pockets of calm and find pockets of care and find pockets of love. And those pockets are really important to carry you forward. We all need kind of hopeful pockets, especially when we're in dark places. One of the other things I would say with studying, sometimes when we don't feel we're doing something good enough, like studying, we may strive to isolate ourselves and be like, oh, well, clearly I need to isolate. I can't be around other people because I have to study. One of my sisters does it where like she'll have ongoing exams and she like won't make any plans leading up to the exams, and it's like, oh well, you need rest and you need relaxation, and those things, if you give yourself time with other people, if you give yourself time to relax, if you find places where you can find joy, that will probably actually help you study better and study more. If you can create more joy, you can balance it with more studying. I hope that makes sense. One of the other things I wanted to say from a developmental standpoint when it comes to children and parents, children who grow up with caregivers who are unstable and unwell have kind of two choices. So choice A is something's wrong with my caregiver, and choice B is something's wrong with me. And from the standpoint of a child, admitting that something's wrong with your caregiver is basically like a life-threatening realization, because children come into this world very vulnerable. So if they recognize early on that their caregiver isn't going to be able to muster enough well-being to care for them effectively, it's going to be a very traumatic realization for the kid. So kind of the lesser evil is what often happens is that the children will say, okay, choice B, something's wrong with me. And in that way, there's this kind of awful cognitive distortion that, oh, if something's wrong with me, then I have control of the situation. I can do this or that. If I'm such and such way, my parent will love me. If I have such and such achievement, my parent will love me. If I look a certain way, my parent will love me. If then. And it's just a losing battle. The truth was, it was choice A. There was something wrong with your caregivers. They were mentally unwell. They're still mentally unwell. It's not their fault because it sounds like a tragic accident, and often schizophrenia stems from trauma, and it's awful. It's awful for everyone. I had conversations with an older therapist I used to see, and sometimes I would have a frustrating issue with a family member, and I would just go to my therapist and I'd be like, there's no winner. It's just like we both end up being sad and upset by the end of it. It's a lose-lose no matter what. There's not even like a win-lose or or a win-win. It's just always lose-lose. And unfortunately, that's kind of the thing, right? It's not, you love your parents and they love you in the ways that they can, and it's not the healthiest love, but it is there, and I'm sorry. It's a lose-lose, a lose-lose-lose. Find your light, find your joys, find the moments where your parents are stable and enjoy those. Hold them as little pockets of joy, but please do not try to save your parents. Please save yourself. If you want to help your sister later on, you can do that, but it's that stupid airplane metaphor. You have to put your oxygen mask on first before you help someone else, and you can't help someone who's drowning if they're just gonna pull you under the water. You're both gonna go under. And unfortunately, with a lot of mental health conditions, especially if it's a child trying to help a parent, you're just gonna go under. And I don't want to see you go under. I want to see you swim into, a happy future. I definitely believe there is a happy future for you, and I believe there can be more happiness in your present with some of those joys. I guess I would say also, I hope you can relinquish any self-blame you have about how you were treated growing up. It wasn't your fault. You didn't get a great deck of cards, but you're strong, you're resilient, and you're gonna go forward and make the best of what you can with the deck of cards you were dealt. When you want to improve, when you have the heart and the energy and the verve, you'll do that. I think people have a great level of perseverance through the darkest of circumstances, through the most hostile environments, through chaotic environments. We all can come out on the other side stronger and healthier and happier. It's not easy. It's not. The effects of trauma probably will be something that you'll have for the rest of your life. It's true for all of us, right? That the experience of our childhood, they don't go away. Even for people who had relatively happy childhoods, they still have whatever things they have from it. There's a poem, it's like, it's all about how parents mess up their children, and then by the end of the poem it's like about messing up the kids the poet will have as well. No parent is perfect. Mostly I just hope that you can separate yourself from the belief that you're bad and there's something wrong with you for wanting consistent love and care. There's nothing wrong with you. You're doing the best you can. This listener write-in got cut off at the end of the video, so I am filming a P.S. I'm sorry that the video got cut off. One thing I do want to emphasize, thank you so much for writing in. I know it's really hard to talk about family things, and even in your letter you wrote that you felt guilty about talking about your mom. A couple things that may be helpful for you. There's a book called Mother Hunger, and I think for anyone who had challenging experiences with a mother who was mentally unwell, I think it could be a good book for you. It deals with enmeshment and codependency, which sounds like there's a fair bit of that for you. And I think also finding ways you can be independent and strong apart from your family. I understand wanting to be there for them as much as you can, but again, you have to really put your feet forward for yourself in order to have a strong foundation, because unfortunately that strong foundation isn't coming from your family. But I think we all have to make our way and find our strengths along our journeys. So look for those places where you can really fill your own cup, whether that's with aunt figures or female figures who can show you more stable guidance than your mother's able to offer you, and more than your father can offer you as well. There's a fair bit of research that shows that kids who go through traumatic experiences, they're more resilient, or they tend to be more resilient if they have guiding figures, so teachers or other adults who can lend more support if that support isn't directly coming from family. So if you can find those places where you can find supportive figures, I think that will be really important for you, or mentor figures. I wish you all the best, and please feel free to write in 6 months down the line if you're able to implement some of the strategies I mentioned. Overall, I hope you take really good care of yourself, because you are deserving of love and care. And I'm sorry that your upbringing hasn't been stable, but that doesn't mean you can't have a good life. And maladaptive daydreaming is just one component of that. But I think once you find more emotional solidity in other areas of your life, the maladaptive daydreaming won't be as much of a challenge. So I do wish you the best, and thank you for writing in. To everyone else, please like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Feel free to join the Patreon to support this channel and receive early release videos, well-being tips of the month, book of the month, and journal exercise of the month. I hope y'all are well. Take care.